You got to put the time and energy in to excel. Nothing comes easy. It's a long game.
I like the word friction because a lot of ways to create a frictionless experience is how you make the client feel.
Treat every client as if she's your grandmother.
That is what you want. That's
Absolutely.
what I'm talking about.
Right.
Everyone, every rank, every position, your law firm should be banging down your door. Andrew, what are you doing with this idea? This is terrible. That to me is a healthy organization.
The Earley Show will begin after a brief word from today's sponsor, Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our 24/7 virtual receptionist team.
Answering Legal is staffed with trained professionals who know how to handle legal calls in a professional, courteous manner. And that provides a positive experience to callers. The receptionists are trained and understand the type of calls that our firm is getting. They can answer frequently asked questions. They can take messages. They can schedule appointments. And that allows us to, one, promptly respond to our client, and two, we have a record. That is probably the most crucial part of this business.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Earley Show, sponsored by our friends over at Answering Legal. I'm your host, Chris Earley. I'm a personal injury attorney in Massachusetts. And as always, I bring you on this show the very best in the legal industry. And if you have not done so already, be sure to pick up my memoir. It just released a few weeks ago on Amazon called Scaling the Wall. Today we have someone I have a lot of respect for. His name is Andrew Finkelstein. I'm sure many of you know of Andrew. He's in New York. He has built up a very impressive and large practice, and he has not done it overnight, right? He has done it over the long haul, doing it the right way. So I wanted to get him on the show, ask him, how he's done it, successes, challenges. He's a very savvy entrepreneur, very savvy trial lawyer, and we're going to learn a lot. So as always, make sure you sharpen your pencils. I'm sure there'll be plenty of writer-downers today on the Earley Show. So Andrew, appreciate you very much. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure to be here. I hope I don't disappoint. After
No
that.
pressure, right?
Right.
So I've met you. We have some cases together, and I've enjoyed, as I said, getting to know you, working with you. For those who don't know, could you just sort of take us back in time? Generally, growing up, mom and dad, what were they like? Where'd you grow up? Just take us back to the beginning, please.
Sure. I have to edit it down because I could talk for a long time about my parents. So I'm physically sitting right now in Newburgh, New York. I was born and raised in Newburgh, New York, went to public school in Newburgh, New York. My folks ended up in Newburgh, New York, which is about an hour north of New York City, because my mom's father, my grandfather, had a pharmacy in Queens and in Newburgh, New York. So he would spend half his time up here, down there. And then he ended up spending this predates my birth by years, but then he was spent up here. And then my parents were married, and I'm the youngest of three. My mother would come up and visit her father and bring my father. And my grandfather introduced my dad, who was a brand new lawyer, to some lawyers up here. He started doing pleadings for them. Back then they had to be dictated or typed. He just did them. He did everything he could to make some money. He was trying cases in New York City, then tried a case. He went to Brooklyn Law and was he wasn't a Court Street lawyer. He was on 42nd Street in Manhattan. Court Street is a reference to Brooklyn trial lawyers. And then he came to Newburgh, was helping a lawyer here, and was asked to try a case here, which he did. And the way he was treated by the court officers and the judge, he said to my mother, this is how the story goes at least, if I move to Newburgh, I'll add 20 years to my life, because of how respectful and kind the court officers and the whole system was as compared to New York City. So that's what he did. He joined the firm he was doing pleadings for. And I don't know, 6 months in, that lawyer died of a heart attack. So he stepped right into that practice, and suddenly he had his own practice and built it from there, doing everything. And then really he built a significant reputation for doing criminal defense work. He did probably 25 to 30 murder trials. And then every single person that he represented, he said, if you ever know anybody in an accident, said, recommend me. Hired his first lawyer, next lawyer. And he was in the late 70s, early 80s, probably one of the first lawyers, certainly upstate, to focus exclusively on personal injury. At the time, everybody was generally a general practice, did a little bit of everything. And he just stopped doing everything else and doing personal injury and went to all the lawyers around and said, why don't you give me your plaintiff's cases? And suddenly he has dozens and it's growing and growing, lawyers referring cases to him. And he's growing the firm right here in the Hudson Valley. So that's kind of the very short version. 2 older brothers, and unfortunately, both my parents have passed away.
I love that story about your dad. There was a lot to unpack there. He sounded to me like a guy who got after it, didn't sit around. Obviously, sounds like a high energy guy. Let me ask you this.
If you want to, this is what he would say. If you looked in the definition, in the dictionary for hustle, this picture would be there.
I love it. I love it.
For sure. We're out every night, dinners, out to lunch every day, walking up and down. At the time, Newburgh was a bit smaller than it is now, but all of the professional offices were compressed on a few streets. He was walking up and down the streets, seeing the doctors, the lawyers. Old school hustle.
What's the greatest lesson you took from him?
I can't define one, but there's been a lot. And it wasn't a direct lesson. Well, I wouldn't say you caught me by surprise, because it's hard I'm going to give you one. And this, I think, is one of the best ones that I've embraced, but I can give a lot more throughout this as they come to me. It is always looking forward. And the way he would exemplify that is, if there's a lawyer, and I embrace this and do this myself. If there's a lawyer who tries a case and gets a bad verdict, the very first thing he would always say is, that's yesterday's news. Move on. You can't get stuck thinking backwards, thinking like mistakes that have made. You have to understand them, learn from them, but you can't get stuck in that place. Your mindset always has to be looking forward.
Keep it moving, right? Don't
Exactly.
get down. You keep going. When did you become an attorney?
I'm going to give you another one.
Sure, go for it.
A few of them. Best case is a settled case. Right? There are a lot of great cases. I try a lot of cases, take a lot of verdicts, but at the end of the day, best case is a settled case. There's no embarrassment of settling a really good case, as long as you're getting really good money. Right? And he exemplified hard work. You gotta put the time and energy in to excel. Nothing comes easy. It's a long game. Definitely a long game.
I like this episode already, Andrew. You're speaking my language.
Yeah.
So when did you become an attorney?
What year? 1991. Yeah, 1991. I went to Syracuse undergrad, have a degree, dual major in finance and marketing. Then after graduating, I moved to Boston, lived there for a year, working at, I actually worked there during the summers. And then I worked at a Shearson Lehman, a brokerage house that doesn't exist anymore. I then went to law school, went to Brooklyn Law, graduated Brooklyn Law, and joined my dad. When I joined my dad, it was one office, one location. The day after I was admitted, I picked my first jury and tried a lot of cases. That's a true fact. I don't exactly, it was throw you right in. And then 5 years in, I already had one child and I'm still trying cases. I went to get an executive MBA at Pace, where I basically brought my law firm to the program and workshopped everything, every aspect of developing a true business plan, a growth plan, and then executed it.
Yeah, I always do my homework, and I did learn during my homework that you got your MBA, which surprised me because a lot of lawyers don't do it, but it didn't surprise me because we're going to get into it in a little while, of how you built up not a law office or practice, a law, a business providing high level services, right? We'll talk about that. So you entered in 91. How big is your firm today? How many lawyers? How many non-lawyers?
Somewhere between 80 and 90 lawyers and 200 to 220 in support staff, something like that. Those are numbers I don't like to track. I
Sure,
track a lot of numbers, but
that's a big bus, and you sit here very casually and comfortably. And so, a lot has gone into enabling you to have so many people on the bus and still have the time to, do what you do. So that's going to be very instructive for our audience. Let me ask you this. So,
but let me just comment on that.
yep.
Just very quickly. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I could talk about leadership and all that, but I also am a very good delegator. And it's easy to say delegate, but it's hard to execute. And there are a couple really important things about delegating. When you delegate something, the responsibility and the onus to do a proper delegation is on the person delegating, the delegator. And oftentimes I see people delegate something, but they just say, will you take care of X or do Y or whatever, and not spend the time to really micromanage. You have to micromanage when you delegate, because if you don't micromanage when you delegate, what comes back often is not consistent with what you thought was you were delegating. So what I often find, and where people get frustrated, is they get something back is not what their expectations were, and they get angry at the person that they delegated to, instead of looking in a mirror and saying, hey, maybe I didn't do a good job in communicating properly exactly what I was looking for. So I say that from experience of having not been not delegating too well and getting things back, to recognizing that it's really it used to be my issue. I totally micromanage all my delegations.
So that was a process of sort of leveling up your delegation, right? And I'm sure it's an ongoing discipline because it's a real art form, right? When do you, looking back, when do you think you kind of got to the point where you were doing it at a high level to really grow the firm? Because you're one guy. You need multiplication. You need exponential work. When do you think you started to get better delegation and figure it out?
2-3 years into practice, when I was what allows us to my firm to be what we are, the size we are, and operate the way that we do is our software system. So I spent a lot of time. At one time I had 15 programmers. That what exists today did not exist back then. We were paperless in 1995, like before the internet. We were fileless in 2000, meaning paper, everything scanned in and everything done. And then we could open remote offices. So in order to build the software system that we needed, I had to really micromanage. I couldn't just say we needed to do A or B. I had to really micromanage a step by step how I wanted what the output to be and the workflow. It was really a lot about workflow, step by step, where it goes, what happens.
I like that a lot.
And it's all creating systems. And if you spend the time up front to create the systems, and you've done it and delegated in a way that the system is what you executes the way you want it to execute, then your life becomes a lot easier.
All right, this is fascinating because you were ahead of the curve. So this is the 90s you're talking, right? You're sort of getting your sea legs. You're advancing your father, the firm that you take over now. At this point, you're advancing the firm that your father started into the next century, right? Were people questioning, it sounds like your business acumen, you're bringing into your law firm, right? Were people on the outside ever questioning, hey, why are you, doing that? Why are you paperless? This is the way we do things. Did you get any kind of pushback, resistance? Because it sounds like you were doing some radical things at the time, which today are not radical, but 30 years ago, it's just out there, right? Paperless. Wow, that's what are you talking about? Did people embrace that back in the 90s? Or
Oh,
no?
well, outside the firm, I really didn't care because I wasn't dependent on them to
Sure.
embrace or not embrace. It was unimportant. Inside the
Yeah.
firm, uh, was there resistance? If there was met with resistance, they're not here anymore. It's like, well, this is the direction we're going. We're going to invest in everybody here in your skill set. That was a big challenge, bringing everybody's skill set along with the technologies, and bringing in training. And when I say kind of flippantly, they wouldn't be here anymore, that really didn't exist. It was more of a willingness to learn. Everybody was given the opportunity to learn technologies and processes and so on. And frankly, everybody embraced it, is really what it came down to. Because what I learned over the years is that people want to learn. They embrace, if you give the opportunity, or I should say, the right people want to learn. Those are the people that you want in your firm. And if they're not willing to, um, really excel in what you're doing, then they're not the right people for you.
So bringing the MBA into a law firm, right, isn't commonplace. You don't see that a lot. And I see the lawyers that have an MBA as sort of they have an advantage. Is there one particular lesson that came with your MBA that you really feel like gave you a decided advantage over other firms when you were getting started?
Yeah, it is the corporate. I got to think of what the MBA for. There are two classes on it, but it's basically your corporate culture, right? I'll think of what it's called, but
Okay.
there's every corporation, law firm, entity has its own, not, of course, culture, but it's either directed and developed, or it's left to just create its own culture. And if you're not, um, affirmatively taking control of your culture and defining it and allowing other people to define it for you, that's where there's always oftentimes a disconnect. You need people, um, focused on the same core principles as the organization. Every organization, and what I studied and learned, uh, I don't care if it's a law firm, a software entity, a small mom and pop, um, cleaners, whatever it may be, that they will all have the same. Um, um, when I say the same, the people are the same. They don't all come across the same. Meaning, there are some people who are culture carriers, some who are culture killers. If depending on what the culture is, uh, there are, I'll just define them as lazy people. There are type A people, and the same a type A person in different organizations is going to do the same type of either positive influence, or they could have a horrible negative influence. So part of it is recognizing this is this type of, I'll have to say type A person, and then how to deal with them.
So even the 90s, you were focused on culture building.
Totally.
See, that's different. I just don't think, see, this is where you were disruptive and innovating. And that's why your firm is where it's at today because of these things, uh, you know, decades ago.
Look, I totally agree. Out of the people that I told you, the average time of people with the law firm is 23 years. Average. It is not uncommon for people to be here 30, 40, and we have 3 people here 50 years. I have probably in excess of 10, I want to say 15 people here more than 40 years. I probably have 35 people here over 30 years.
I met
Right.
one at the Massachusetts Academy of Trial Attorneys a holiday dinner in 2023. She was a lovely lady, and you pulled. So this is an interesting story for the audience. I ran up to you, sort of accosted you, say, "Hey, I want to talk to you." Because I think I said to Andrew, I said, "You are where I want to be," and I asked you some questions. I was peppering you, and you grabbed my arm and said, "Hey, I want you to come over here." So we went to the corner of this ballroom, and you asked one of your team members to come over. I forget her name. She's lovely. She had
Liz
glasses.
Wolf.
Yes, and you
Liz
said
Wolf or Judy Gentile, one of the two.
maybe both, right? But you
Yeah,
said
I don't know.
tell this guy why you stay, and she went on to do it. I thought it was remarkable. I mean, 40, 20, 30, 40 years is just insanity, right? Especially in today's day and age where there's just so much transience, jumping ship. That's success. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool. That's how you get cultured carriers on steroids. I mean, that's like so
Well,
impressive.
so there's no magic to it. It's hard work, but there's no magic to it. We have everybody do a self-assessment, and in our self-assessment annually at their anniversary, it includes all the elements of what we believe are culture carriers. And we ask them to self-assess. Are they in fact a culture carrier or a culture killer?
No in
And
between.
you have to look, you can't, when you say, it's easy for me to say it, but if you haven't defined what your culture is, not what your purpose, not what your mission is, but what your culture is. Okay. They're distinct and for sure different, but our culture is care, compassion, and concern for our colleagues, our clients, and our community. That's it. And every year I ask people to self-assess how they actually acted in a way that demonstrates that they acted with care, compassion, and concern for either their clients, their community, or their colleagues. But your actions have to match your words, right? So we give everybody an hour, 2 hours paid every week to go volunteer at whatever organization they want. And that is really, people are very appreciative of that, not because they're getting the time, but how it makes them feel, right? And then that transcends to their clients.
How long have you done that at the firm?
I don't know, 15 years, 20 years.
Wow. That's
Long
great.
time.
That's really cool. I've seen you at different conferences speaking, and you mentioned at one conference, obviously you have a massive database of past clients and a lot of referrals from past clients. How do you stay in touch with them so they don't forget you? How do you stay top of mind?
Well, we have I talked earlier about delegating and having a system. We created a system. I don't know it off the top of my head right now, but in essence, we send gifts. We'll send a mug, but we sporadically send gifts. I wrote a book. I sent everybody one of my books, send birthday notes, and we have an email distribution list of all of our existing and past clients. But I have a marketing department that we sat down and we just mapped out the system, and I just check on it and make sure that it's operating.
What, if you don't let me ask, what percentage of your clients are referrals from past clients?
2/3.
All right. Just curious again, how about attorney referrals or other attorneys?
That's out of the non 2/3. Like what percentage?
Well, just ballpark.
Probably 15%.
So 2/3.
I just don't know what the top.
No, that's fine.
They've got that 2/3 of my cases come from existing prior clients or relationships. Somebody who knew somebody who we represented or helped, or from reputation in the community. That's what we attribute all of our cases, and I'm kind of putting all that in one big bucket.
That's very impressive. So that really, I would imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, reduces your marketing spend because,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I personally view, I do a fair amount of advertising, television, billboards, the whole gambit. And I kind of view that as marketing to the people who already know us so that we stay top of mind. Right.
Right.
I don't, we have to stay top of mind.
Let me ask you this. So you're very sensitive to how your clients are treated. That's a core tenet that you have, right?
Oh,
Did you come out of law school like that? I mean, did you start that neither? Did it take you time to really kind of figure out when you love the clients, they love you back? Like, when did you kind of figure that stuff out?
well,
That's
I'll
really
just
where
go
it's
back.
at, you know?
I'll go back to the lesson learned from my father. And he said, it's pretty simple. Treat every client as if it's my mother, my grandmother,
Mm.
right? His mother, my grandmother. Treat every client as if she's your grandmother. Yeah. I mean, that's all.
Can't go wrong.
You have that simple rule.
You can't go wrong.
And I would always call my grandmother back, and I'm not going to disappoint her. I'm not going to spend a little extra time because my grandmother, I'll just say, was a very stereotypical Jewish grandma, right? With the guilt. And last thing I wanted to hear was, you haven't called me. And so, some of it was, I don't want to hear the complaints from her. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a simple rule that my father gave me. And that's how I always think about it.
Well,
And I
love
always
that.
think about it, if I was a client, how would I want to be treated?
So people are sticking around your firm, which is really a recipe for success and sustainability, sustained long-term success. But you do need to hire occasionally, I would assume. How do you go about you? I'm sure you're not really involved in hiring, and tell me if I'm wrong. How do you go and sniff out this is a future culture killer, right? This potential hire or a culture carrier? Is there any thing you've saturated in your hiring practices that has led you to hire more carriers than killers?
So I'm familiar with lots of the tests and testing, and I kind of tried all that, and I'm not a believer in it. Maybe I'm wrong, but here's one of the reasons why people stay so long.
Mhm.
I live by a very simple principle. I presume positive intent. And I just presume, until I'm proved otherwise, that whatever decision that was made or action that was taken was done either in the best interest of the firm or the client, or both, right? Ideally, it's always both. And that doesn't mean people don't make wrong decisions. They make wrong decisions, but you have to look below the surface as to why did they make that decision. And as long as that decision was made with the belief it was in the best interest of the firm or the client, I'm okay with it, as long as you then learn from it and don't make the same mistake twice. But if it comes from an impure motive, then that's when we have a problem. And I don't think you can discover that in a little interview process, right? As long as somebody has the core skills and they are aligned with what our culture is, I'll give them a shot. And then in the way we kind of operate, in my mind, is, you have 5 years to prove yourself, right? I take a long-term view. You have 5 years to prove yourself. If you made it 5 years, that's what my responsibility is to the organization and job. Don't let people get beyond 5 years who shouldn't be, right? So beyond 5 years, everybody should definitely have proven themselves as culture carriers and competent and so on. But so there, I do have turnover in that 0 to 5 year window, but after 5 years, that's why there's longevity. And
Okay.
people know that, if they want a career as opposed to a job, this is a good place to be. I just had a woman who on Monday, and this happens many times. It's her second tour with us. I'll call it that.
That's
People
awesome.
get here, they're doing great, but they think the grass is greener. So this is America. I say, go for it, right? I won't hold it against you. And then if they're good, we'll say, our door's always open. I have many people who have left and come back.
I love that. That's amazing. That's just so gratifying, and everybody wins.
Yeah.
The organization wins, team member wins, clients win, to get the band back together, because they went elsewhere and they discovered that, no, I have a happy home. So one thing, I'm a big believer, they say success leaves clues, and I've taken some things from you, namely surveys, right? I know you're very high on client surveys. Before you talked about that at a conference, I didn't think of doing that. Now I do. Um, and I frankly stole your language of, I call it, love, care, and concern. Are you being shown, Joe Smith, the client, love, care, and concern? When I first started this, Andrew, the feedback was poor. And I said, oh my God, this is a train wreck. Now, honestly, I can tell you it's pretty rare to get a bad one.
Right. And what are you doing? You're sending the message to your staff. This is what we care about.
Yeah.
Right. This is what we care about. So display it. If you don't, you are what you measure.
Right.
Okay. Very simple principle. You are
Yeah.
what you measure. Most people spend their time measuring the easy things, how much, the revenue, the expense, that's yeah, sure, that's important, but that's not what distinguishes your firm from another firm. What distinguishes your firm from another firm are the things that are hard to measure. And those entities that go ahead and try to measure them anyway are the ones that stand out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'll throw something out to you. I'll kind of reverse this a little bit. Do you ever take surveys about yourself?
I did it today, actually, because I was prepping for this interview with you. And I used to do it, and I stopped doing it. And I did it today, and I get a whole lot of nice messages back. So that's very vulnerable to do that. And so thank you for inspiring me to do that. I encourage every listener, survey yourself, put yourself out there. It's worth it.
Yeah. And more in my organization, I survey myself. I put it out there where it's completely anonymous.
Yeah, same.
Because I don't want people just to say whatever they think they'll want to hear. I want to hear the truth. And I do hear, I definitely have modified and molded my actions based on the feedback I get.
How often do you survey team members?
For myself or one another?
Sorry, of yourself.
It's, I used to do it more frequently. I don't want to, it's sporadic.
Sure, I get it. Come on, flying.
No, frankly, because I think what's happened is people have seen how open-minded I am to constructive criticism, and now people just come in and tell me, right? It's not.
That's good.
I don't need to survey. They'll come in and say, "What the fuck did you do that for?" or whatever.
See, that is what you want. That's
Absolutely.
what I'm talking about. Everyone, every rank, every position, your law firm should banging down your door. Andrew, what are you doing with this idea? This is terrible. That to me is a healthy organization.
You bet.
I encourage the listener to adopt that, because that's where good things happen. Everyone feels comfortable and free and secure to give their opinion to the boss. Like, that's winning.
Yeah. Well, let me just go a layer deeper on that. That's because everybody knows, I truly believe, you're not saying it as a personal attack against me. You're saying it because you think it's in the best interest of the organization that's for this to occur.
Right.
I don't take any of it personally, and I expect the same in return, which is I could be pretty straightforward and right to the point, but look, people understand it's not a personal attack. It is purely because I think it could be done better, and let's get it better. Right? You're not a bad person because this mistake was made or this wasn't done. It's not a reflection on you as an individual. As long as you're giving the right effort, it's all good.
I'm in this season of my life, brutal honesty. I'm saying, hey, Andrew, can I be brutally honest with you? Hey, Gene, can I be brutally honest? And that invites such open, because people take their guard down. And it's so open. So I love when people are brutally honest with me, right? And I'm brutally honest with my clients, team members, family, right? Everyone. So I think that's really important, right? No BS. Let's talk real and be honest. That's where the good stuff is.
So just coincidentally, on my drive into the office today, I was listening to NPR, Hidden Brain, and I only heard a little bit about it. And they were interviewing a woman about authenticity leading to happiness. right? And the little bit that I heard, and I'm going to track it down and read this book. The little bit that I heard is there are people who have siloed lives. They live one life at work and they live a completely different life at home. And then there are some people who have overlap between home and work as to who they are as a person. And then there's where there's no distinction. That's not to say that they have a work, but they're authentic in both. And they've done studies that authenticity leads to happiness, so that you, in any part of your life, you're not feeling like a fraud, because that's what happens a lot. That people go to the extreme, being that you can have a great family life, and because you define yourself as having a great family life with your spouse and your significant other and children and so on, then it's okay at work to do something unethical because I'm good at home. They silo that.
Right.
And you can't escape that, right? Or vice versa. They're so committed at work and they neglect and do things that they're not proud of at home. But they silo it by saying, well, but I'm really good at X, Y, and Z at work. Yeah, there's a lack of authenticity there that you just have to recognize and work through.
100%. I think how you do something is how you do everything, right? So you have to be kind of, you got to be universal in how you do these things. I thought this is really cool. You have in your case management software, I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, a picture of the client in every client's file. Is that right?
Sure. Because
That's really cool. That's awesome.
Otherwise it's just a number and words on a screen, and you can lose the sensitivity that what we're really doing is helping people.
Just curious, because I'm selfishly curious. So in today's day and age, if a client is, they don't come to the office, they sign electronically, do you ask them to take like a selfie? How you actually, that's cool. Yeah.
We always send us a picture of your license, anything. We always get a picture of them.
That's great. No, I love that, because then when the team members talk to the client, the tabs are open, you're looking at them, they're a human being in pain, suffering, a low point, and that's smart. That's just good. It's just good human love, care, and concern to someone else.
And it's hard to do it if you don't know what the person looks like.
Right. Just a file. Right. Well, no, actually, a lot more going on there.
Right.
Let me ask you this. So you're very data. The reason why I believe part of the reason you've been successfully scaled your firm is data. So let me ask you this. So if you were, say, on an island, right, you can get a couple of numbers each day to gauge the health of your organization. What do you need to see? A couple things every day while you're at a commission, on an island somewhere.
The health of the organization,
or just what you want to see. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, new cases coming in, but I don't look at that kind of stuff, and revenue. I don't even look at that kind of stuff. It is to me, it's all about inventory management. What do I mean by that? Knowing which cases. Here's a core principle of everybody that I talk about all the time. If a client comes to us and they're going to pay us a $10,000 fee or a $100,000 fee, you may have heard me say this, or $1 million fee, we better make sure that they get $10,000 worth of service, $100,000 worth of service, or $1 million worth of service. I don't think there's a client, if I express to them, look, you're going to pay us $10,000. Do you expect $100,000 worth of service? I mean, we'd be upside down on that. And nobody would expect that, right? So you just have to recognize that and make sure everybody in your organization does that. So what happens naturally, the higher valued cases percolate to the top of everybody's list. We do that in a systemic way. But what I don't want to do is have a case where we should be earning let's call it a $300,000 fee, because we should get let's say $1 million result, but we only have it in our inventory as a $100,000 fee.
Mm-hmm.
Then, because everybody in the organization is only going to then deliver $30,000 worth of service. when they should be getting $300,000 worth of service. So the inventory management side of it is making sure not only that we properly value every case, but stay on top of it so that when things change during the course of the litigation or the life of the case, we are always adjusting that. I spend a lot of time doing that.
A lot of inventory management, right? Well, I think that's smart. Let me ask you this. I've heard that you
can't make financial projections.
right.
What are we going to invest in the upcoming year? Advertising, quarterly, whatever it may be, or our hiring practices. Every expense has to be offset by expected revenue coming in. And if you don't know what your expected revenue is coming in, then you're just just playing the game with both hands tied behind your back.
So let me ask you this. So you've said before that you're not competing with other law firms. You're competing with other service providers, the Amazons, the Verizons. Could you talk about that? How that influences your how you position the business, how you move the business forward with that mindset, right? No, I'm not competing with other law firms. I'm competing with service providers that my clients deal with every day.
Yeah, well, so there's two I'll just define it as buckets of competition. One is to get the case, right? And that is when I'm competing against other lawyers. When there's a need, there's a consumer or a client out there that has a need and they need it filled. I want to fill it. So I'm competing from that perspective. But once they retain me, all the other lawyers that they were considering fall away, and they're not measuring me against those other lawyers. They're measuring me against other service providers that they come into contact with and who's providing frustration and friction to them. And my objective is allow them to have as little friction as possible in their representation with us. It should be easy. And we do as much as we can because they're comparing us to when they go to Starbucks. How are they treated by the person when they order their coffee and pick up their coffee? And every interpersonal interaction that they're having across the day is being measured about the same interaction that they have with us. So they go to Starbucks, just as an example, and I guess the barista or the whoever's helping them doesn't treat them particularly nice. And then they happen to come to my office that day and they're welcomed, offered a cup of coffee and they're treated with kindness. We're getting a little positive check there for sure. But that's how that's just human nature. That's what goes on. And they could care less what happens at Earley firm because they have no clue what's happening at Earley firm. So I am truly competing against everybody else who's providing services to my client from a client satisfaction standpoint.
I like that. I like the word friction because a lot of ways to create a frictionless experience is how you make the client feel, right? Not the check they get at the end, but like how you made them feel leading up to the check. That's what's memorable. So I like that. I encourage the audience, reduce friction, make them feel good. A lot of it just figures itself out, right, Andrew? I mean, a lot of it's just easy. If they feel good about what you're doing, they're going to refer everyone, hopefully they refer everyone that they know to you. And it's like, that guy, Andrew, he made me feel pretty good. He's my guy. Right.
Yeah. So let's just talk about that. When you say I made somebody feel good, I can define what that is. It's not because I told them that they look nice or whatever, got them a lot of money. It is in all the years I've been doing this, I've distilled it down to this. And what is my job? And what is anybody who's watching this? What's your job? It's to give your clients the information so that they can make an informed and educated decision about their case. You are empowering clients. And once you empower them to make educated decisions, they feel great because they are secure and confident that they're doing the right thing. And I'm the one that put them in that position and they love me for it. It's as simple as that. Now, it's unrealistic to think that if a client walks into your office and you say, look, this was a fall down case that had tough, and you talk like this, and had tough liability. And I thought we were going to get tossed on a motion for summary judgment because the defect was not existing for a long enough period of time. So they offered up $85,000, and I told them that was a really good number, so you should take it. Client's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Right? That's how lawyers talk. A lot of lawyers talk that way. And you forget about doing it on the first time. They're going to be thinking, well, what have you done for me this whole case? You're coming in and just telling me to settle a case. And it creates distrust. You want to create that trust that you are their advisor. And it just takes time. So I've somewhat systematized that through videos. I have a whole series of videos that we send our clients. I want consistency of communication to all of my clients. So I make it easy for people on my staff. Before you're going to talk about offers, there's a little video of me. They email to the client, watch this first. I explain the offer. I explain not their specific offer, but kind of what goes into it. I explain before we put a case into suit, what is a lawsuit? I have a little video about that. Everything you can imagine to educate our clients. Right. And then what I always say is, this is not my case.
I say that a lot too. And that means nothing. That's important. That's impactful.
Well, it's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So, going back to your dad, he was a guy, sounds like hair on fire, just networking, hustling, getting after it. I feel you're the same, right? Like you're also hair on fire. You're decades into your career, but you're still flying on airplanes, doing talks, doing podcasts. Could you talk about your networking sort of regimen, like your discipline when it comes to networking? What does that look like? Or have you sort of scaled back? Or are you still?
I haven't scaled back.
Okay, I didn't think so. So like, so I'm always getting after it, Andrew. Coffees, networking, presentations, like everything. What are some of your things that you do that other lawyers should consider doing if they're willing to truly, hustle and work their butt off to get business?
It's very simple. Get involved. Right? Pick the organizations, pick the community, but they're not going to come find you. You need to go find them. So here, I'm the incoming president of the New York State Trial Lawyers. I've been on the board of the New York State Trial Lawyers for 30 years. I've held every position there. Get involved in your local bar association, meet other lawyers. I am also, outside of that, I'm involved in the bank where I do, I won't go into the whole long story, but I started a bank and I'm chairman of the board of a bank. Opens me up to a whole different community. So I do a lot of functions for that organization. Any opportunity you can to speak on something like this, and you have to search it out, right? You have to raise your hand and have something to say. And how do you develop that? You read a lot of books and you create your own legacy. That's all I could say. Create your own legacy. Think about what you want your legacy to be and create it. Right?
Yeah. The long game.
I'll tell you what I want my legacy to be. I'll give you didn't ask me the question, but you should have. Maybe it was coming next. Right? I did an exercise I have lunch with everybody in my firm. Okay. Once a year, every year by group, right? I'll do it with a group and I'll do different exercises. And the purpose of that is to build community, reinforce our culture, show that I care. And it's just nice you want to look, work is still a 4-letter word. I can give you a long list of things I'd much rather be doing than by being on this podcast and be sitting at my desk. We all would, but the reality is we all work.
Yeah.
So if we're going to work, I'd like to be surrounded by a bunch of people that I respect and that we treat each other nicely. So I have lunch every year with everybody. One year I did an exercise where I just asked everybody to write down a name take a piece of paper, write down a name. Who, and before I have them write it, I say, nobody is going to say who you write down. Nobody's going to see who is on that paper, and nobody's going to ask you. But write down the person who is the most instrumental of you becoming who you are today, whether it's professionally, personally, whatever it may be. But who had the greatest influence, and whether they know or they don't know. And everybody would sit and think about it, and then they would write it down. Then I'd ask a bunch of questions. I say, okay, never tell me who's on that. You could take that paper, put it in your pocket. Nobody's going to see it. But assume that the person that you wrote down just walks in this door and sits down, and I say, Mr. or Miss, whoever it is, I just asked this question, and which is, who influenced, and I would call somebody Colleen, the most in her life, and for her to be who she is today, and she wrote your name down. What do you think that person would think? And everybody thinks about it, and they go, wow, and think about what your person would think. And tell me what they'd be surprised. They would be shocked. And then a lot of people would share who it is. It might be my high school football coach or my, a whole range of people. And I said, well, what is it that they demonstrated that actually why you put that name down? It's because they took an interest in me. They taught me something. They showed me the way. They believed in me. They give a whole long series of, everybody has their own reason for it. They believe in me. Okay. And then I asked, why do you think they did it? And some say, I don't know. Some say because they love me. Some say because they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Like a whole series. I said, okay. I said, now, I want to work in an organization that everybody goal and commitment is to one day get their name on somebody else's paper. To be here, because to me, that's the greatest compliment. To be able to have just that. So what are you doing here to get your name on somebody else's paper? And that's the kind of place I want to be working at. And that is my personal legacy of what I want. I would love to be on other people's paper.
That's awesome. That's impact, right? That's real impact. That's what I hear.
Yeah. And so to get your name on somebody else's paper isn't by not putting yourself out there, isn't by communicating in a kind way to help somebody along, isn't making people feel bad if they've made a mistake. It's, sharing what you can share to help somebody achieve their goals.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in giving, Andrew. I think givers really win this. If there's a prize like givers, I think that's the way to be generous, right? I know you're a generous guy.
Yeah.
Takers lose, I feel. We're wrapping up. Let me ask you a couple of questions. So back in the 90s, you were a visionary. You're still a visionary. Could you just tell the audience, what do you see the future of law, the future of the modern personal injury law from, say, 10, 15, 20 years? What do you see in the horizon that we should be mindful about?
I think technology is going to make everybody far more productive and far better lawyers. I don't think it will reduce the need for lawyers. I think it will only increase the need for lawyers, but it'll allow you to do, I'll just call it gray hair work versus ministerial repetition, right? You will be able to think and communicate to clients I just think in a better way. And I do think there's a consolidation that's going to happen and has been happening in our industry, which I don't think is a bad thing.
Mm.
So
Let me ask you this.
because it's creating more and more systems to make it more systematized. Why should it be that somebody who's in a really, I'll just say a catastrophic event, because they happen to pick one lawyer over another, end up with millions of dollars of difference? I don't think that's right myself.
Mm. Yeah, I hear
Right.
that. That's fair. Let me ask you this. At this level of at this age of your career, this level of scale, what's your greatest challenge professionally?
I just say building the next generation to step up and continue doing what I'm doing.
Legacy,
I
right?
mean, that's definitely that's it's the biggest challenge.
What couple more questions for you. What book has had the most profound impact on your life?
I don't know about on my life. The one that jumps out at me is there's a book from like the 90s called True Professionalism. I don't remember who wrote it. It was a Harvard guy, but that definitely spoke to me about acting with true professionalism. And there are people who might be great lawyers, but they're not great professionals. And there's a huge difference.
I'll pick up the book. Let me ask you this final question. What's your greatest success in life so far?
I smile right away because no doubt she would, but no doubt my relationship with my wife and my kids.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you. As I've made it clear to you, a lot of respect for you and what you've built up. How can people get in touch with you?
Just shoot me an email. A Finkelstein at AFINKELSTEIN at lawampm.com.
Very good. Andrew, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, this was fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, that's it for this episode of The Earley Show. Be sure to check out more episodes of our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the Answer Legal YouTube channel. And finally, make sure you give the podcast a review. It really helps us out. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.